The bus screeched to a halt. The driver's eyes blazed as he bellowed, "Step off now, or you'll regret ever boarding." Watch until the end to see how this incredible story unfolds, and let us know what time you're watching today. The afternoon sun lay low over the city, casting long, golden shadows that danced along the worn sidewalks and bustling streets. The urban hum was constant, a symphony of honking horns, murmured conversations, and the occasional distant wail of a siren. In this ever-moving mosaic of life, every sound, every scent told its own story. At a crowded bus stop, on a busy avenue, Marcus Washington waited patiently. He clutched a weathered leather satchel close to his side, its surface scuffed by time and use, much like the determined lines etched on his face. The air was filled with the aroma of spiced street food, mingled with the underlying tang of engine oil, and even as the city moved relentlessly, Marcus seemed to exist in a quieter, more introspective world. A battered bus, its paint peeling and windows streaked with the remnants of countless journeys, rumbled to a stop before him. The screech of its brakes punctuated the ambient noise like a harsh note in an otherwise gentle melody. As the bus's doors swung open with a familiar hiss, Marcus stepped aboard, his eyes absorbing every detail of the interior. The seats were a patchwork of worn fabrics and faded colors, each one carrying the memory of someone's daily commute. Faint echoes of past conversations lingered in the air, mixing with the lingering scent of stale coffee and city rain. At the front of the bus, behind a slightly cracked windshield, sat Samuel Thompson, the driver. His expression was stern, almost etched in permanent lines of fatigue and suppressed discontent. Samuel's eyes, dark and watchful, darted briefly over the new arrivals as he adjusted the controls. There was a deliberate precision in his movements, a mechanical routine born of years behind the wheel. Yet, behind that practiced exterior lay hints of personal struggles and a guarded heart shaped by experiences and beliefs that few dare to challenge. His hands, calloused and firm, gripped the steering wheel as though it were both his anchor and his adversary. Marcus found a seat near the back of the bus, settling in with a quiet sigh. He had always felt that there was more to his daily journey than mere transportation. In the subtle interplay of glances and half-heard words, he sensed stories unfolding around him, a tapestry of lives intersecting briefly before continuing on separate paths. Today, though, there was an undercurrent of anticipation that he could not quite name. Perhaps it was the way the sunlight filtered through the smudged windows, or the soft murmur of the city outside, calling to him like a long-forgotten memory. Across the aisle sat Mrs. Evelyn Reed, a gentle soul whose silver hair and kind eyes spoke of a life filled with both sorrow and joy. Every day, without fail, she boarded the bus at the same stop, her presence a quiet testament to perseverance. Her frail hands rested on her lap, and her eyes wandered around as if searching for fragments of a past that had long since faded. In her soft murmurs and occasional smiles, there was an unspoken understanding of the city's harsh truths. Evelyn had seen it all, the rise and fall of fortunes, the betrayals that life sometimes delivered with cruel precision. And yet, she carried on with a dignity that belied the hardships of her years. As the bus pulled away from the curb and merged into the steady flow of traffic, Marcus's thoughts drifted back to his own journey. Born into a family of high expectations, he had always felt the weight of unspoken pressures. His parent, known in elite circles as a top executive, had built an empire on the back of perseverance and keen insight. Yet, Marcus had chosen a different path, one that led him to navigate the concrete jungles of the city, striving for his own place in a world that often seemed indifferent to his struggles. In his eyes shimmered both hope and a guarded skepticism. Hope for a better tomorrow and the cautious belief that every act, no matter how small, could tip the scales of fate. The rhythmic thump of the bus's engine and the gentle vibration of its movement served as a constant reminder of life's unstoppable momentum. Marcus listened to snippets of conversations around him, a mixture of laughter, complaints, and muted exchanges that hinted at personal battles waged silently. There was a palpable tension in the air, as if each passenger was carrying a secret that the city itself was trying to hide. Even the soft hum of the bus's engine seemed to murmur warnings of impending storms and unexpected turns. At one stop, as the bus slowed to pick up new passengers, a young man in a tattered jacket climbed aboard and greeted Samuel with a curt nod. His name was Derek James, a face Marcus recognized from previous rides. Derek, with his quick wit and a glimmer of mischief in his eyes, had a way of brightening even the dreariest commutes with a well-timed joke. Yet behind that smile, there was a depth that few bothered to explore, an unspoken story of dreams deferred and battles fought in silence. As Derek took a seat beside Marcus, the two exchanged a brief look, one that carried the weight of shared experiences and silent understanding. The cityscape outside blurred into a collage of concrete and light as the bus made its way along busy streets lined with towering buildings and bustling marketplaces. Marcus's mind wandered as he recalled fragments of conversations from earlier in the day, whispers of secrets and half-truths that hinted at deeper undercurrents in the lives of those around him. There was something in the way Samuel's eyes occasionally flickered with an emotion too guarded to be easily read, something that suggested hidden conflicts and unspoken grudges. And as Marcus observed the subtle interplay of glances between the passengers, he couldn't shake the feeling that today was different, that the familiar routine was on the brink of transformation. The interior of the bus was alive with small dramas unfolding in quiet corners. A middle-aged man in a worn suit sat alone, his face a mask of stoic resignation. His eyes were fixed on a spot far beyond the window, as if he were trying to escape the confines of his thoughts. At the same time, a group of teenagers huddled near the back, their laughter a blend of carefree exuberance and underlying tension. In these fleeting moments, Marcus found reflections of his own inner conflicts, a mix of hope, disillusionment, and the ever-present awareness that trust was a fragile, easily broken thing. As the bus navigated through the maze of city streets, Marcus took in every detail with an intensity that bordered on the poetic. The rough texture of the bus seat, the slight chill that ran through the air conditioning, even the muted vibrations of the engine underfoot, all these small sensations wove together to create a tapestry of experience that was both deeply personal and universally resonant. He thought about the many journeys he had taken, each one marked by moments of fleeting beauty and sudden, jarring disruptions. It was as if the city itself was a living organism, its heartbeat echoing in the clatter of wheels on asphalt and the whispered secrets of its inhabitants. Throughout the ride, Samuel maintained his quiet vigil at the front of the bus. There was an unmistakable rigidity to his manner, a deliberate effort to enforce order in an environment where chaos seemed always ready to break through. His eyes, sharp and sometimes unyielding, swept over the passengers with a mixture of suspicion and a self-imposed duty. It was clear that for Samuel, every stop, every new face was a potential challenge to his authority. There was a story behind his guarded demeanor, one that hinted at past betrayals and personal disappointments, but it was a story he chose to keep hidden beneath layers of routine and obligation. As the journey continued, Marcus's thoughts turned inward. He recalled long nights spent in quiet reflection, questioning the fairness of a world that judged him by his appearance and background. His parents' success in high society had always been a double-edged sword. While it provided a legacy of achievement, it also cast a long shadow of expectation and scrutiny. Marcus had learned early on that the world was quick to label and slow to understand, and he carried with him both the pride of his heritage and the burden of others' assumptions. In the soft glow of the setting sun that filtered through the grimy windows, he silently vowed to carve out his own identity, one that was defined not by the expectations of others, but by the strength of his own convictions. In the brief moments when the bus came to a halt, allowing new passengers to climb aboard, subtle exchanges of words added layers of complexity to the unfolding narrative. A quiet dispute over a seat, a fleeting remark about the weather, even the way a hand brushed against another in a moment of shared discomfort. All these small interactions hinted at deeper stories beneath the surface. Marcus listened carefully to these exchanges, his mind piecing together a mosaic of hidden truths and potential betrayals. There was a tension in the air that he could not quite name, a sense that trust was a commodity in short supply, and that every smile might conceal a secret. At one point, as the bus rounded a corner and the cityscape shifted from modern glass towers to older, more time-worn neighborhoods, Marcus noticed a change in Samuel's tone. The driver's eyes narrowed briefly as he caught sight of Marcus, a look that mingled disdain with something unspoken, perhaps fear or an old, bitter grudge. The moment was fleeting, but it left Marcus with a lingering chill, as if the air itself had turned colder. It was as though Samuel's gaze carried a warning, a subtle reminder that not everything was as it seemed on this routine journey. The city, with all its vibrancy and contradictions, had a way of revealing hidden layers in the most ordinary of moments. The worn bricks of ancient buildings whispered stories of bygone eras, while neon lights flickered in rhythm with the modern pulse of commerce and ambition. Marcus found himself drawn to these details, sensing that each element of the urban landscape was a character in its own right, full of secrets, potential, and unexpected turns. In the interplay of light and shadow, he could almost hear the echoes of promises made and promises broken. The bus continued its steady progress, and with every mile that passed, the delicate balance of order and chaos seemed to shift imperceptibly. Marcus's heart beat in time with the rhythm of the journey, each thump a reminder of both his hopes and his doubts. In his quiet observations, he noted the way a young mother gently soothed her crying baby, the soft murmur of reassurance in her voice, and the way a solitary man stared out the window with eyes that held the weight of countless unspoken regrets. These moments, seemingly trivial in isolation, began to weave together a larger narrative, a tapestry of lives intersecting, each with its own hidden story waiting to be revealed. As the bus moved deeper into the heart of the city, the late afternoon light grew softer, bathing everything in a warm, forgiving glow. Yet, beneath that gentle brightness, there lingered the promise of shadows. In the interplay between light and dark, Marcus sensed that the journey was more than just a simple commute. There was a growing undercurrent of tension, a hint of forthcoming conflict that was as inevitable as the setting sun. Even as the passengers settled into the routine of their ride, each was unknowingly positioned at the threshold of an experience that would challenge their perceptions and test the bonds of trust. Marcus, seated by the window, watched as the world outside transformed from bustling streets to quieter lanes lined with modest homes and hidden courtyards. The textures of life changed subtly. The rough, worn pavement gave way to neatly trimmed lawns, and the soft murmur of distant conversations replaced the clamor of the busy thoroughfare. It was in these small, almost imperceptible shifts that Marcus found solace and a fleeting sense of calm. Yet, in the recesses of his mind, there remained the nagging awareness that nothing was truly as it seemed, that behind every familiar face and everyday scene lay a secret waiting to be unearthed. A gentle breeze stirred the interior of the bus as it rolled past clusters of flowering trees and old brick facades. The cool air mixed with the residual warmth of the day, carrying with it the scent of blossoms and earth. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sensory details wash over him, each detail a reminder of the beauty and complexity of the life he navigated daily. In that moment of quiet introspection, he silently wondered about the nature of trust and the cost of judgment. How many lives, he thought, had been upended by a single moment of misunderstanding or a fleeting look of disapproval? And how many secrets lay hidden behind the carefully constructed facades of those who rode the same bus? As the bus neared a busy intersection, Samuel's attention snapped back to the road with a force that startled even the most complacent of passengers. His eyes, still dark and inscrutable, scanned the mirror and the faces reflected within it. There was a flash of something, a brief, almost imperceptible flicker of recognition or perhaps regret, before his expression hardened once again. Marcus caught that fleeting look, and for a heartbeat, he felt as if the entire weight of the day's unspoken tensions had coalesced in that silent exchange. It was a reminder that every journey was layered with complexity, that every person carried a story filled with contradictions and hidden scars. The steady clatter of the bus on the asphalt continued, punctuating the silence between the murmurs of the passengers. In the quiet dialogue of everyday life, Marcus's thoughts wandered to his own path, a journey marked by determination, but also by the burden of expectations. His family's legacy loomed large, a constant reminder of a world he had longed to join, yet often felt alienated from. The pressures of living up to a reputation built by a top executive parent had driven him to carve out a separate identity, one defined by hard work, perseverance, and an unyielding resolve to be judged by his own merits rather than by the shadow of his heritage. Even as the bus continued along its route, the seeds of uncertainty and mistrust had been quietly sown. Samuel's unspoken biases, the silent glances exchanged among passengers, and the subtle shifts in tone during every interaction all pointed toward an inevitable collision of worlds. It was as if the stage had been set for an event that would upend the familiar order, challenging the assumptions held by each individual on board. Marcus felt this stirring deep within him, a growing awareness that today's journey might be a turning point, a moment when the threads of fate would begin to unravel in ways none of them could foresee. The landscape outside gradually transitioned from the harsh angularity of downtown to the softer curves of suburban streets. The noise of the city receded into a gentle murmur as the bus moved toward quieter neighborhoods, yet within the bus, the energy remained charged with unspoken tension. Passengers who had been lost in their own worlds now exchanged brief, meaningful glances. A wordless communication passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that, beneath the surface of everyday routines, something significant was in the air. Marcus sat quietly, absorbing every detail, every nuance. The bus, with its creaking seats and persistent hum, was more than just a means of transportation. It was a vessel of secrets and silent confessions. In the interplay of light and shadow, of warm smiles and fleeting frowns, he sensed that each person on board was playing a part in a larger drama, a drama that would soon reveal hidden truths and challenge the very foundations of trust. And as the bus made its slow, deliberate journey through the fading light of day, Marcus could not shake the feeling that his own story was poised on the brink of an unexpected twist, one that would force him to confront not only the judgments of others, but also the truths hidden deep within himself. In that moment, the world outside, with all its shifting colors and sounds, became a metaphor for the inner lives of those traveling within the bus. Every crack in the pavement, every fleeting shadow cast by the setting sun seemed to hint at secrets and betrayals yet to be uncovered. Marcus's heart beat steadily, each thump echoing the unspoken questions that now filled the space between expectation and reality. As the bus moved steadily forward, the narrative of their lives began to intertwine in ways that promised both beauty and pain, hope and heartbreak. And so, as the day drew to a close and the soft glow of twilight settled over the quieting streets, the stage was set. Marcus, with his quiet determination and unyielding resolve, sat poised at the threshold of a journey that would forever alter his understanding of trust and betrayal. Samuel, the vigilant bus driver with eyes that held too many unsaid things, continued his careful watch, unaware that each mile carried them closer to a moment of reckoning. And in the silent spaces between conversations and the gentle cadence of the bus's engine, the promise of an unexpected twist lingered. A promise that nothing, not even the most routine journey, was ever truly simple or without consequence. In that shared silence, as the bus rolled on through the slowly darkening streets, every passenger carried with them the weight of their own hidden truths. And though none spoke of them aloud, the tension was palpable, a delicate balance of hope and foreboding, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for the moment when the familiar would shatter and reveal the profound, often painful truth beneath. The city, in all its chaotic beauty, had become a living canvas of intertwined lives, where every sound, every scent, every fleeting glance was a brushstroke in a masterpiece of human experience. As the bus approached its final stop for the day, the interplay of light and shadow deepened, and a sense of quiet inevitability settled over the interior. Marcus's eyes lingered on the darkening horizon, on the quiet determination in Samuel's gaze, and on the soft expressions of the other passengers. In that reflective pause, the world outside seemed to whisper that everything was about to change, that the delicate balance of trust and suspicion was nearing its breaking point. And though the night was yet to fall, there was an undeniable feeling that soon the calm before the storm would be shattered by revelations that none could have foreseen. In the hush of that moment, with the gentle clatter of the bus echoing like a heartbeat, Marcus felt both the weight of his past and the uncertainty of his future pressing in upon him. Every detail of the day, the worn leather of his satchel, the muted voices around him, the subtle shifts in the driver's eyes, had woven together into a tapestry of promise and warning. And as he sat there, silently bearing witness to the unfolding journey, he understood that this was only the beginning, a prelude to a drama where every word, every gesture would carry the potential to alter lives in ways both profound and irreversible. The bus, its engine now a soft purr against the backdrop of the night, rolled slowly to a stop at a familiar corner. In that quiet moment, with the city's lights twinkling like distant stars, Marcus took a deep breath and prepared himself for what was to come. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path fraught with twists and hidden betrayals. Yet, amid the complexity and the unspoken tensions, there was also a spark of hope, a belief that even in the darkest moments, truth and redemption might be found. And so, as the first stars began to appear in the deepening sky, the stage was set for a story that would challenge every notion of loyalty, trust, and the very essence of what it meant to be human. In that lingering silence, with the promise of tomorrow hanging heavy in the air, Marcus clung to the hope that his journey, though filled with unexpected turns and secret pains, might one day lead him to the truth. The city around him, with its ever-changing moods and hidden depths, whispered of a future where every betrayal held the potential for redemption, and every lost moment could be reclaimed. And as the bus slowly emptied its passengers, each stepping off into the cool embrace of the night, the delicate tapestry of lives continued to unfold, weaving together destinies in a way that was as inevitable as it was mysterious. The stage was set, the players in motion, and in the quiet hum of the night, the promise of a new chapter was written in every shadow and every fading light. A promise that the true nature of trust and the price of its betrayal would soon be revealed to all who dared to look beyond the surface of a seemingly ordinary journey. The bus rumbled on as dusk deepened into a heavy, unsettled night. The route took a sudden turn into rougher neighborhoods where the glow of streetlights was sparse and the pavement bore the scars of neglect. Inside the bus, the charged atmosphere had begun to shift from quiet observation to an undercurrent of tension, as if the very air were pregnant with unspoken conflict. Marcus sat, still reeling from the day's earlier events, when he noticed the change, a tightening in the expressions of his fellow passengers, a furtive exchange of glances, and a heaviness that seemed to press on every soul aboard. As the bus trundled along, Derek's earlier light-hearted banter had faded into silence. His eyes darted uneasily between Marcus and Samuel, the driver whose stern face had darkened further since the previous stop. There was a palpable energy in the confined space. Every whisper of fabric, every shifting of a weight on a seat carried the promise of revelation. Marcus's heart beat a steady, anxious rhythm as he tried to lose himself in the muted hum of the engine, yet every passing moment felt like the calm before a storm he could not avoid. What would you do in a moment like this? Marcus wondered silently, his thoughts echoing the vulnerability that thrummed through the bus. Samuel's gaze, once methodical and measured, now lingered too long on Marcus. The driver's eyes burned with something unspoken, a mix of anger, pain, and a determination that suggested he had been holding back for too long. The bus jolted suddenly as it hit a bump, and in that brief moment of instability, a sharp word cut through the silence. "You," Samuel said, his voice low but charged with menace. "Get off this bus now." The words, so unexpected and harsh, sent a shock through Marcus. He hesitated, unsure if he had heard correctly. The murmurs around him grew, into a subdued clamor as some passengers exchanged worried looks, while others kept their eyes averted. "Sir, please, I haven't done anything wrong," Marcus replied, his voice trembling yet laced with a quiet defiance. But Samuel's face was set, his eyes narrowing into slits of anger. "You do not belong here," he declared, and with that he opened the bus door wider and gestured brusquely for Marcus to leave. For a moment, time itself seemed to slow. The bus's interior fell into a hush, broken only by the sound of the door swinging open and the sudden rush of cool night air flooding in. Marcus's mind reeled in disbelief. His heart pounded painfully as he stepped off the bus, each movement weighed down by humiliation and shock. He glanced back, his eyes meeting a hard, unreadable expression on Samuel's face. The silence that followed was laden with a question that Marcus felt in his bones. Why had he been treated this way? Outside, on the dimly lit street, Marcus's world shrank to the echo of his own footsteps on cold pavement. He stood under a flickering street lamp, the feeble light sketching harsh shadows on his face as a wave of confusion and hurt crashed over him. Every sensory detail, the damp chill in the air, the acrid smell of exhaust mingling with the distant odor of rain, seemed amplified in his isolation. What would you do if someone you trusted turned on you? He thought bitterly, his inner voice a mixture of anger and sorrow. Meanwhile, inside the bus, a heavy silence reigned. Passengers exchanged looks that spoke of discomfort and regret. While Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier mischief replaced by an awareness of complicity. Evelyn's gentle eyes filled with quiet disapproval as she watched the scene unfold. Her heart ached at the sight of injustice, even in this everyday setting. The bus continued its route, the steady clatter of its wheels now a grim metronome marking the passage of a moment that would change everything. As Marcus lingered on the curb, trying to steady his racing thoughts, a sleek, black car pulled up with an almost deliberate grace. Its polished surface reflected the sparse streetlights, and the vehicle's presence in the War neighborhood was as out of place as a diamond in the rough. The door of the car swung open smoothly, and a man stepped out. His suit was impeccable, his every movement exuding an air of authority and calm assurance that contrasted sharply with the raw disarray of the moment. "Marcus, come with me," the man said in a tone that brooked no refusal, yet held a subtle kindness that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. For a long, suspended moment, Marcus regarded the stranger with a mix of suspicion and desperate hope. The man's eyes, clear and unyielding, seemed to penetrate the layers of hurt and confusion that had settled around him like a shroud. Then, in a voice that was both tender and laden with regret, the man spoke a single sentence that shattered the lingering silence. "I am your father." The words fell like a hammer blow, reverberating through the quiet night, and sending a shockwave through every person present. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. His mind, still reeling from the injustice of moments before, struggled to comprehend the revelation. Every memory, every whisper of a family secret, every shadow of an unspoken truth swirled around him with sudden, piercing clarity. For an eternity that lasted only seconds, the world seemed to stop. The man's words echoed in the stillness, mingling with the distant sounds of a city that had suddenly become both alien and achingly familiar. Marcus's eyes widened with a mixture of incredulity, pain, and a dawning sense of destiny. The revelation was a double-edged sword, a painful confirmation of a legacy he had long tried to escape, and yet also a key that might unlock a future filled with possibilities he had never imagined. Inside the bus, Samuel's eyes flickered with shock as he overheard the unfolding scene. A murmur rose among the remaining passengers, a mixture of disbelief, guilt, and the dawning realization that something far larger than a single act of prejudice had just been set in motion. Derek's face, once animated with sly amusement, drained of color as he recognized the gravity of the moment. Evelyn's gentle expression softened into one of deep sorrow as she whispered, "This isn't right." Her voice was barely audible, yet it carried the weight of all the quiet injustices of a lifetime. Marcus's father stepped closer, his presence both commanding and gentle. "Marcus," he said, his voice low and resonant, "I know this is hard to understand. I have tried to protect you from the harsh realities of this world, but in doing so, I made choices that have hurt you." His words were measured, each syllable steeped in the bittersweet history of a life spent in the corridors of power, a life that had built empires but also erected walls between loved ones. "I never wanted to cause you pain," he continued, "but sometimes the burdens of legacy are heavier than we ever imagine." Marcus's mind raced, his emotions a tangled mess of anger, betrayal, and a desperate need for answers. "Why did you leave me?" he demanded, his voice cracking under the strain of years of longing and hurt. The question hung in the cold night air, unanswered for a long, agonizing moment, as if the very universe were reluctant to offer a simple resolution to such a profound wound. Before Marcus could speak further, Samuel's voice broke through the tension. "I did it because I thought I was protecting something," he said, his tone faltering under the weight of his own confession. "I acted out of pain, years of pain that I thought justified my actions." His words, raw and unpolished, revealed a depth of personal anguish that few had ever suspected. "Your family, your legacy, they've caused more harm than you know," he added bitterly, his eyes darting around as if seeking absolution in the darkened faces of the onlookers. The revelation hit Marcus like a tidal wave. Every slight, every whispered rumor of his family's corporate might and the subsequent sacrifices demanded of those who dared to oppose it crashed down on him with relentless force. He recalled the quiet moments of isolation during his childhood, the stifled cries of a boy caught between worlds, a world of opulent boardrooms and another of everyday struggles on crowded city streets. In that instant, every instance of feeling out of place, every moment of silent judgment, took on a new, painful dimension. As the confrontation intensified, voices began to rise in a raw chorus of accusation and regret. Marcus's father, his eyes reflecting a lifetime of mischances, looked directly at Samuel. "How can you justify what you've done?" he asked, his voice firm yet laden with sorrow. "Your actions have not only hurt my son, but have revealed a part of our past that was meant to remain hidden." Samuel's face contorted with inner conflict. His features, once so resolute, now betrayed the scars of personal loss and the corrosive effects of years spent nursing a grudge. I lost someone too," he admitted in a trembling whisper. "I lost everything when my own life was shattered by decisions made by your family." His confession, fragile and heartbreaking, cut through the tension like a shard of broken glass. The bus stop, once merely a transient stage for everyday commutes, had transformed into a battleground of emotions and secrets. The cold night air, heavy with the scent of rain and regret, bore witness to the raw interplay of anger, sorrow, and the desperate hope for reconciliation. Marcus's inner turmoil roiled as he struggled to process the cascade of revelations, the humiliating act of being thrown off the bus, the bitter words of Samuel, and now the staggering truth of his own identity. What would you do in this moment of betrayal? The unspoken questions seemed to echo around them, challenging each soul to confront the limits of their compassion and resilience. In the midst of the chaos, a small, almost imperceptible detail emerged, a crumpled piece of paper slipping from Samuel's pocket as he gestured wildly during his confession. It fluttered to the ground unnoticed by most, yet when Marcus's gaze fell upon it, he recognized a faded photograph and a scrawled name that sent a chill down his spine. The image, blurred by time, depicted a younger Samuel alongside a man whose presence was unmistakable, a man whose identity was now irrevocably linked to the legacy that Marcus had long tried to distance himself from. The photograph was a fragment of a past that neither Marcus nor Samuel had fully acknowledged, a secret that hinted at betrayal and a shared history too painful to confront. The sight of the photograph ignited a fresh surge of emotion in Marcus. His eyes widened as the implications became clear. The man he had just met, the one who claimed to be his father, was not a stranger in Samuel's life. The betrayal ran deeper than mere prejudice. It was interwoven with a personal vendetta, a decades-old grudge that had been harbored in silence and manifested in the most public of humiliations. The shock of this realization was overwhelming, and for a long, silent moment, the night seemed to hold its breath. Amid the heavy silence, Evelyn, her voice soft but resolute, broke through the mounting tension. "We are all wounded by this world," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, "but it is how we mend our wounds that defines us." Her words, though simple, carried the weight of experience and compassion, urging everyone to consider the possibility that beneath every act of cruelty lay a human story riddled with sorrow and regret. "Imagine," she whispered to those gathered, "if you discovered that someone you trusted had been driven by such deep pain that they lost sight of what truly matters. What would you do in that moment?" Her question lingered like a challenge to every heart present, stirring even the most hardened souls to reflect on their own capacity for forgiveness and understanding. Derek, whose earlier smugness had given way to a dawning realization of his own complicity, looked down at his trembling hands. "I never meant for it to go this far," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I was caught up in things I didn't fully understand." His admission, heavy with remorse, underscored the truth that in the maze of hidden agendas and personal vendettas, no one was entirely innocent. Marcus, though overwhelmed by the bitter cascade of emotions, felt a flicker of defiance ignite within him. His eyes, now bright with unshed tears and unspoken resolve, met Samuel's with a challenging intensity. "I will not be defined by your bitterness or by the mistakes of our past," he declared, his voice echoing with both pain and determination. "I refuse to let this moment, this public humiliation, dictate who I am. I am more than the shadows cast by those who have betrayed me." His words, though laden with sorrow, were also a promise, a vow to forge a future unshackled by the scars of yesterday. As the confrontation reached its fevered peak, Marcus's father stepped forward once more, his tone firm and resolute despite the lingering sorrow in his eyes. "Samuel," he said, addressing the troubled driver, "you must understand that we are all products of our past, but your actions have hurt more than you know. My choices in life have had repercussions far beyond boardrooms and business deals. They have touched lives in ways that cannot be undone." His gaze swept across the gathered crowd, as if challenging each onlooker to acknowledge the painful truth that even the most respected legacies could be tarnished by personal vendettas. "Can you truly believe," he continued, "that the pursuit of revenge, no matter how justified it may seem in the moment, can ever heal the wounds that have already been inflicted?" Samuel's face, hardened by years of pent-up grief and anger, trembled as he struggled with the weight of his own confession. "I acted in the dark, blinded by my own pain," he said, his voice cracking under the pressure of guilt. "I thought that by rejecting you, by rejecting what you represent, I could somehow undo the wrongs that have haunted me for so long. But I see now that in doing so, I have only deepened the chasm between us." His admission, raw and unguarded, resonated with the bitter truth that revenge was a path with no true victory, only endless cycles of hurt and regret. Under the pale light of the street lamp, the night seemed to pulse with a fragile hope as each person absorbed the gravity of the moment. The whispered confessions, the shared sorrows, and the tentative steps toward understanding wove together into a tapestry of human frailty and possibility. Marcus's voice, steady despite the tumult within him, rang out with a final declaration. "I will remember tonight, not only for the pain inflicted upon me, but also for the lessons learned about trust, forgiveness, and the heavy price of holding on to bitterness." His words, both a lament and a challenge, invited every listener to confront their own inner demons and to consider whether redemption could emerge from the ruins of betrayal. In the lingering hours before dawn, the group slowly began to disperse. Some lingered in quiet conversation, their voices soft and introspective, while others retreated into the anonymity of the dark streets. Marcus's father and Marcus walked side by side, their shared silence speaking volumes about the years lost and the long road toward healing. Samuel, left alone beneath the flickering glow of the street lamp, stared at the ground as if searching for a path out of the labyrinth of his own regrets. Every memory of anger, every tearful confession, and every unspoken promise of redemption played through his mind in an endless loop. He knew that the actions of this night would haunt him for a long time, but somewhere in the recesses of his tortured soul, a small ember of hope began to glow. A hope that perhaps, someday, forgiveness could be found even in the deepest wounds. As the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness, the battered bus stop transformed from a scene of confrontation into a quiet monument to the complex interplay of human emotion. The cool, early morning air carried away the remnants of anger and despair, replacing them with a tentative promise of renewal. Marcus's steps, though heavy with the burden of a night's revelations, grew firmer with each stride. His father's presence beside him was a silent assurance that, despite the betrayals and the pain, there was still a chance for healing. A chance to rebuild a trust that had been shattered by a world too quick to judge. The city slowly awoke as the sun rose, bathing the once dark street in gentle hues of gold and lavender. In that soft, emerging light, the events of a night began to recede like a distant storm, leaving behind scars that, with time, might transform into symbols of resilience. Marcus's heart, though still bruised, pulsed with a renewed determination. He turned his thoughts inward, reflecting on the tumultuous journey that had led him to this fragile moment of clarity. What if forgiveness is the key, he thought, not just for me, but for all of us caught in the relentless cycle of hurt and retribution? In the quiet aftermath, as the city stirred to life and the bus stop emptied of its troubled congregation, a powerful question lingered in the cool morning air. Can the human spirit ever truly rise above betrayal, or are we forever bound by the weight of our past? For Marcus, that question would fuel his journey forward. A journey marked by the scars of yesterday, but illuminated by the promise of a better tomorrow. And so, as the sun climbed steadily into a clear sky, the memory of the night's events, of harsh words, tearful confessions, and the revelation of a long-hidden truth, became a part of the tapestry of lives forever altered. The painful encounter at the bus stop, with its bitter blend of anger, sorrow, and the first tentative steps toward reconciliation, would echo in the hearts of those who witnessed it for days to come. In that echo lay the fragile hope that, even in a world marred by prejudice and old wounds, the possibility of redemption could blossom if only one dared to forgive and begin anew. In the soft light of dawn, as Marcus and his father disappeared down the quiet street, leaving behind the shadows of a night filled with turmoil, the promise of change glimmered faintly. The bus stop, now silent and empty, stood as a testament to the complexity of the human heart. A place where betrayal and healing, anger and forgiveness had danced together in a painful yet transformative embrace. And in that silent space, the reader is left to ponder. When the past is so heavy, what does it truly take to step forward into a future defined not by old scars, but by the strength to forge new beginnings? With each step into the emerging day, Marcus carried both the burden and the lessons of night. His journey, a mosaic of heartbreak and hope, was only just beginning, and as the city awakened around him, so too did a new chapter filled with possibility. The promise of renewal, as delicate as the first rays of sun, beckoned him onward, whispering that even the deepest betrayals could one day give way to the enduring strength of forgiveness and the quiet, persistent beauty of a heart that refuses to remain broken. And so, beneath the vast expanse of a brightening sky, the night's painful revelations began to melt into the soft light of morning. A gentle reminder that every end holds within it the seed of a new beginning, and that every scar, no matter how deep, may eventually become a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The early light of dawn had barely crept over the horizon when Marcus and his father found themselves walking through a quiet, rain-slicked street lined with shuttered shops and silent, watchful buildings. The turbulent events of the night still clung to them like a stubborn fog, and every step echoed with the weight of unspoken words and unresolved pain. Marcus's heart pounded with the raw mixture of betrayal and a desperate yearning for answers, while his father's eyes, those same eyes that had once radiated an imperious calm, now shimmered with regret and vulnerability. They walked in silence for a long while, each lost in their own tumult of memories and remorse, until a familiar figure emerged from the shadows at the corner of a narrow alley. Samuel stood there, leaning against the cool brick wall of an old building whose faded murals told stories of a bygone era. The bus driver's posture was slumped, his face etched with lines that now bore the scars of anguish and responsibility. The streetlight cast a weak glow on his features, and in that half-light his eyes met Marcus's with an intensity that spoke of years of pent-up sorrow and anger. For a moment, the three men, Marcus, his father, and Samuel, stood in a fragile triangle of pain and anticipation, the silence between them charged with the promise of revelations that would alter their lives forever. Marcus's voice, though trembling with emotion, was clear as he stepped forward. "I need to know," he demanded, the words cutting through the cool morning air. Why did all of this happen? Why was I thrown off that bus? And why have you kept these secrets hidden for so long?" His eyes searched Samuel's and then turned to his father, demanding answers that had haunted him through years of lonely questioning and bitter solitude. Samuel's gaze faltered for a heartbeat, and then he spoke, his voice rough with regret. "Marcus, I did what I thought I had to do. I carried a burden for so long, a pain so deep I believed that by cutting you off, I could somehow protect you from the legacy that had destroyed my own life." His confession was quiet, but loaded with decades of pent-up anguish. He continued, "Your father's decisions, those corporate moves that built his empire, cost me everything. I lost my brother, my home, and my hope. Every day since then, I've carried that loss with me. I was blinded by my need for retribution, and I took it out on you, even though you had nothing to do with it." A heavy silence followed Samuel's words. Marcus's eyes widened as the full force of the revelation sank in. The man who had seemed so unyielding and cruel that night was not merely a vindictive enforcer of some personal bias. He was a man shattered by loss, whose grief had twisted into anger. Yet, the pain that Marcus felt was no less real. "But why me?" he pressed, his voice breaking. "I've spent my whole life feeling unwanted, trying to forge my own identity, and then to be cast aside, like I was nothing. How could you believe that punishing me would heal your wounds?" His father stepped forward then, his presence heavy with the remorse of missed chances and the bitter taste of regret. "Marcus, I know I failed you," he said softly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I chose ambition over family, believing that building a legacy meant sacrificing personal bonds. I thought I was protecting you from the harshness of our world by keeping you at arm's length, but I now see that my absence has only deepened the wounds you carry. I never intended for you to suffer this way, but my choices set off a chain of events that neither of us could control." The three men stood there beneath the awakening sky, the quiet hum of early morning traffic and the distant calls of birds providing a somber soundtrack to their unfolding confrontation. Marcus's emotions swirled turbulently inside him, a tempest of anger, hurt, and a reluctant glimmer of understanding. "So, all of this," he said, gesturing vaguely to encompass not just the cold dismissal on the bus, but the entire legacy of betrayals and secrets, "is the result of a feud that has haunted you both? That your own pain has defined our lives?" Samuel's face crumpled as he nodded slowly, his eyes moist with remorse. "Yes, Marcus. I lost my way when I lost someone dear to me, and I let that loss dictate my actions. I was so consumed by bitterness that I saw your presence as a reminder of what I had lost, a reminder of a past I could never reclaim." He paused, as if struggling to find the right words. "I realize now that in seeking revenge, I harmed an innocent soul, and for that I am deeply sorry." Marcus's father then placed a tentative hand on his son's shoulder. "I know it is hard to forgive, and perhaps nothing can fully mend the past," he said, his voice earnest and tinged with sorrow. "But we must all face the truth of our actions. My choices, my relentless pursuit of success, created a rift that has torn our family apart. I see that now, and I accept responsibility for the pain that has been inflicted. I want to make things right, even if it means confronting the ghosts of my past and the mistakes I can never erase. A long moment of silence passed as Marcus wrestled with the tidal wave of conflicting emotions. The revelations were like shards of broken glass scattered across his heart, each piece sharp and painful, yet part of a picture he had long avoided. He looked at Samuel, then at his father, and in that silent exchange he recognized the complexity of human frailty, how grief, ambition, and loss could distort even the most well-intentioned lives. "I can't say I understand it all," Marcus admitted quietly, "but I do know that I'm tired of living in the shadow of secrets and betrayals. I want to choose my own path, one where I'm not defined solely by the mistakes of the past." His words hung in the air, heavy with determination and the faint promise of forgiveness. Samuel's eyes searched Marcus's face, and for the first time, the hard edges of his anger softened into something akin to sorrowful acceptance. Maybe it is time," he murmured, "to let go of the hate that has bound us all. I cannot undo what has been done, but I can hope that from this moment on, we can begin to heal, even if the scars remain." In that charged moment, the tension that had once filled the deserted street began to ease, replaced by the tentative stirrings of reconciliation. Marcus's father spoke once more, his voice resolute yet gentle. "We have all been prisoners of our past actions, held captive by the choices we made in our darkest hours. But perhaps, just perhaps, we have a chance to break free from that cycle. Marcus, you are not defined by the bitterness of what has come before. You are defined by the strength with which you choose to move forward, the courage to embrace forgiveness, and to build a future unburdened by legacy." Marcus's eyes filled with tears as he absorbed those words. For so long, he had carried the weight of abandonment and betrayal, his life a series of battles against forces he had neither chosen nor understood. Now, faced with the raw truth of his family's failings, he felt a stirring deep within, a call to reclaim his own narrative. "I want to believe that we can all change," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That despite everything, there is a chance for redemption, for trust to be rebuilt. But it won't be easy. It will take time, honesty, and a willingness to face the parts of ourselves we've long hidden away." The early morning light brightened as if in response to his declaration, and the three men stood together in a fragile, tentative unity. Around them, the city was beginning to stir. Cars rolling by on damp streets, the distant hum of life awakening from a long, troubled night. In that moment, the scars of the past did not vanish. They remained etched in the hearts of those present, silent witnesses to the cost of ambition and the toll of unchecked grief. But with each heartbeat, there was the promise of a future where forgiveness might one day heal even the deepest wounds. As they slowly parted ways, Samuel returning to the quiet solitude of his nightly routine, Marcus and his father disappearing into the soft morning light, a reflective calm settled over the scene. The confrontation had been raw and painful, a collision of past regrets and present hopes, but it had also opened a door to understanding. In the quiet aftermath, as the city fully awoke, each man was left to ponder the true nature of loyalty and the price of betrayal. Marcus walked alone for a long while, his thoughts a tangled web of memories and reflections. He recalled every moment of rejection, every harsh word, and every silent accusation. Yet amidst the pain, he now saw a glimmer of possibility, a chance to redefine who he was, to break free from the shackles of a legacy that had long dictated his destiny. The world around him, with its bustling streets and endless horizon, seemed full of promise if only he had the courage to grasp it. In the quiet solitude of a small park, with dew still glistening on the blades of grass, Marcus found a bench beneath an ancient oak tree. He sat there for what felt like hours, letting the cool morning air and the gentle rustling of leaves soothe the turbulence inside him. His mind replayed the events of the night in vivid detail, the bitter confrontation at the bus stop, the shocking revelations, and the painful confessions. But now, amid that internal storm, there emerged a subtle clarity. He realized that every betrayal, every hidden secret, had led him to this critical juncture. The legacy of his father, the anger of Samuel, and even his own feelings of abandonment were all parts of a larger tapestry, a tapestry that he alone now had the power to reshape. As he sat there, Marcus began to see the moral of his journey unfolding before him. Trust, he understood, was a fragile gift, easily broken and painstakingly rebuilt. Betrayal left deep scars, but those scars could also be the source of strength and wisdom if one allowed the wounds to heal. What if, he wondered aloud, the very act of forgiving is the greatest rebellion against the darkness of our past? The thought stirred a quiet determination within him, a resolve to not let the bitterness of yesterday dictate the promise of tomorrow. In that reflective silence, the voice of the storyteller seemed to speak directly to each listener, inviting them to ponder their own experiences. Imagine a moment when you felt utterly betrayed, when someone you trusted shattered the illusion of security you had built around your heart. What would you have done in that moment? Could you have found it in yourself to offer forgiveness, to embrace the possibility of healing, even when every instinct screamed for retribution? Marcus's journey was not just his alone. It was a mirror held up to the hearts of all who had ever suffered the sting of betrayal. By midday, the park was filled with the soft hum of life, a gentle reminder that the world moved forward despite the lingering shadows of the past. Marcus rose from the bench, a sense of resolve settling over him. His father had called him moments earlier, urging him to meet in a modest cafe on a busy street corner where, together, they might begin the slow process of mending the fractures of their family. As Marcus made his way through the bustling city, he thought about the challenges ahead. The work of rebuilding trust, the effort required to confront painful memories, and the quiet courage needed to redefine one's identity away from the ghosts of legacy. Inside the cafe, over cups of bitter coffee and quiet conversation, Marcus and his father began the delicate process of reconciliation. They spoke at length about the choices that had driven them apart, about the sacrifices made in the name of ambition, and about the deep-seated wounds that had festered in silence. His father admitted his mistakes again and again, each confession a small step toward redemption, while Marcus listened, sometimes with anger, sometimes with sorrow, but increasingly with a cautious hope. Their dialogue was not always easy. It was filled with moments of raw emotion, long pauses, and even tears. Yet, with each word, the heavy burden of the past began to ease, replaced by the tentative promise of a future where understanding and forgiveness could flourish. As the afternoon faded into a gentle dusk, Marcus stepped out of the cafe and into the cool embrace of the evening. The sky, painted in hues of lavender and gold, stretched infinitely above him, a vast canvas upon which the narrative of his life was still being written. In that moment, he felt the quiet power of choice. He realized that while the past would always be a part of him, it did not have to define his future. With every step forward, he could choose to break the cycle of pain and instead build a life founded on the strength of forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. Later that night, as the city lights flickered on and cast a warm glow on the rain-washed streets, Marcus returned to the bus stop where it all began. The empty bench and the silent pavement now bore witness not to the cruelty of rejection, but to the quiet triumph of a soul determined to rise above its scars. He sat there for a long while, letting the stillness envelop him, and in that silence he found the courage to finally write his own ending. The pages of his life, stained with sorrow and betrayal, were now open to new beginnings, each word a declaration of hope and each pause a testament to the possibility of redemption. In the soft murmur of the night, as the world around him slumbered in peaceful quiet, Marcus addressed those who might be listening to his unspoken plea. We all carry burdens, secrets that cut deep, betrayals that leave us raw and vulnerable. But within each of us lies the power to choose a different path, to rise above the past and to reclaim our identity not as victims, but as survivors and creators of our own destiny. What would you do if you found yourself at the crossroads of pain and possibility? Would you let the scars define you? Or would you dare to forge a new path with forgiveness as your guide? His words, simple yet profound, drifted into the darkness, inviting every listener to reflect on their own journeys. In that invitation lay a challenge, a call to share their own stories of loss, redemption, and the quiet strength that comes from embracing the full spectrum of human emotion. Share your thoughts, he seemed to say, and let us together explore the delicate balance between holding on and letting go, between the desire for justice and the healing grace of forgiveness. As the night deepened, Marcus rose from the bench, his heart lighter despite the lingering echoes of pain. He knew that the road ahead would not be free of obstacles, that rebuilding trust, both in himself and in others, would be a long and uncertain journey. Yet, as he walked away from the bus stop for the final time that night, he carried with him the wisdom of hard-won lessons and the promise that every betrayal, every act of cruelty, could eventually give way to the transformative power of understanding and hope. In the final moments of this long, tumultuous day, the city seemed to whisper a gentle reminder that every ending is but the prelude to a new beginning, and that within each of us lies the strength to overcome even the deepest wounds. The story of Marcus, Samuel, and the fractured legacy that had once threatened to tear them apart was far from over. It was, in truth, a new chapter waiting to be written, a chapter defined not by the shadows of betrayal, but by the radiant possibility of redemption. So, dear reader, as you close these pages, I ask you to reflect. What does trust mean to you in a world where loyalties are fragile and betrayals cut deep? Can the human heart, scarred by loss and burdened by regret, truly find a path to forgiveness and renewal? Your thoughts, your experiences, and your own stories of hope and healing are the echoes that enrich this narrative. Share your thoughts. And let this tale be a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance to begin again, to rebuild, and to rediscover the beauty of a life defined by resilience and compassion. And as the final curtain falls on this chapter of intertwined lives, remember, every heartbreak carries with it the seed of transformation, every betrayal the possibility of redemption, and every end the promise of a new beginning. What will you choose in the face of your own trials? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more meaningful stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.